Hey everyone, thanks for checking out my Xbox One Retrospective for the year 2015. In these retrospectives, I basically like to go through a console's exclusive library and just point out which games are worth checking out. So let's get right into it. This year, the first big release of the year is State of Decay Year 1 Survival Edition. State of Decay was an interesting zombie survival game that combined strategy and action with roguelike elements. The game was originally released on the 360, but this remastered version was released exclusive on Xbox One. This version included the previous DLC packs, the Breakdown and Lifeline modes, as well as new weapons, vehicles, and a new mission type. The game has the player managing their resources, building bases, and dealing with other survivors, as well as fighting off the zombies. Overall, this game had a pretty good reception and definitely worth checking out if you're into zombie survival games. Following that, the first game I have in my collection for the year, Rare Replay. This is maybe one of the greatest compilations of all time. Celebrating their 30th anniversary, Rare Replay includes 30 classic games by the developer Rare, including many of their NES, N64, and 360 hits. We got all the Banjo-Kazooie games, both Perfect Dark games, Conkers, Viva Pinatas, Killer Instincts, RC Pro-Ams, Battletoads, and even the Battletoads arcade game, as well as many more. There's a good selection from all of the eras, including home computer titles that even the most hardcore Rare fans likely didn't play. The most obvious omissions are games that they didn't have the license for, like Donkey Kong and GoldenEye. Overall, a great package. My one complaint is how the games launch from the dashboard. Many of them have their own installation icons. I think that's all the 360 games, but others have to launch from the menu inside the Rare app, and it's just a bit scattered and messes up your library a bit. Following that, a game worth checking out even if you've played the original, the Gears of War Ultimate Edition. This Ultimate Edition of the original Gears of War is a remastered game that plays fully in 1080p. The game also featured an additional chapter with 5 acts that was taken from the PC release of the game and was never released on the 360. So if you want to check out those new stages on your console, this is a great way to do it. One cool note was that if you bought this game around release, you also got free codes to download backwards compatible versions of the 4 previous Gears games. So I don't own Judgment, I don't really want to own Judgment, but that's a cool way just to check it out for a couple minutes and remind myself why I don't have it. And right after that, the huge release of the year and one of the biggest Xbox exclusives around, Halo 5 Guardians. This follow-up to Halo 4 made some pretty big changes to the gameplay and story. The game was split up into missions that alternated your playable characters. In one set, you played as Master Chief leading Blue Team that's made up of former Spartan 2 soldiers from Halo lore and chasing down Cortana, who's managed to survive her data corruption, but also seemingly teamed up with his enemies. The next set of missions involves Spartan 4s, including a character from Halo ODST, whose job it is to chase down Master Chief and stop him. Big changes to the gameplay mostly revolve around traversal, with each character having a boost pack that allows them to double jump and grab onto ledges and pull themselves up. It really speeds up the gameplay and moving around. Players can also aim down the sights for any weapon now. The game was criticized for being shorter than the previous games and focusing too much on the Osiris team. Multiplayer took some criticism as well because of its card-based rec system in some modes and its lack of any offline multiplayer or co-op. Overall, I think the game is better than it gets credit for. The new gameplay mechanics are welcome and really helps modernize the movement. The story makes much more sense than Halo 4, but I would have liked to have seen more Master Chief missions. And the final exclusive of the year, Rise of the Tomb Raider. Now, this follow-up to the original Tomb Raider reboot was an Xbox exclusive for about a year, though at the time both Microsoft and Square Enix were keeping it under wraps how long that exclusivity was up for. This was basically a pretty big deal because of how well the original Tomb Raider was, and at the time no one was saying that a PS4 version was coming, so if you wanted to check out the sequel to that amazing game, you kind of had to play it on Xbox One.
Beyond all limits or reason.
And that was basically it for physical exclusives for 2015. We'll get into the multi-platform stuff at a later date once I've covered all the systems from that year. But yeah, I mean, still some great stuff here. Let's get right into the digital games, which I usually cover in other videos, but because there's so little to talk about, I'll put them here. First up is Pound or hashtag IDARB. One of the first in a new wave of retro-inspired competitive multiplayer platformers. IDARB is an 8-player sports game that's game design was crowdsourced through Twitter. In the game, you have to get control of the ball and fire it into your opponent's goal. Aside from the fun and frenzied gameplay, if you're streaming your game, viewers can also enter hashtags that launch obstacles into your game. This is pretty fun and inspired a whole bunch of different games in the genre, definitely worth checking out. Next up was Fruit Ninja Connect 2. So with the Connect on its last legs, we had a follow-up to the original Connect game for 360. This game features 4 new multiplayer modes where you slice, throw knives, and dodge targets and obstacles. There's also a new multiplayer party mode, so this is just a fun little casual game. Fruit Ninja was huge at the time. You can kind of see why they did it. Next up is Forza Horizon 2 presents Fast and Furious. This was the first Forza Horizon game I ever played, and definitely worth it. It's a Fast and the Furious themed spin-off of Forza Horizon 2, which was made to promote Furious 7, which was released for free on Xbox around the release of the movie. The game is a ton of fun with a great introduction to the Horizon series. There's a limited number of challenges and cars, but it's a much bigger experience than a typical demo. The game takes place in one of the cities from Forza Horizon 2. There isn't much of the craziness that the movies have been known for, but it's really just some of the signature cars and the voice work by Ludacris. Overall, like I said, a great introduction to the Horizon series. I don't think it's really worth checking out now because we have Forza Horizon 2 and 3 as full games, but this was enough for me at the time. Next up is The Deer God. Now this is a pixel art style 2.5D platformer where you play as a deer. The game introduces some elements from other genres including roguelike and RPG mechanics. While everything about the concept is interesting, including the art, story, and gameplay ideas, the overall execution is all over the place and makes it tough to really recommend. It's still worth taking a look at though. Next up, a pretty big one that I think mostly went unnoticed, Castle Crashers Remastered. This is an update to the 360 hit beat 'em up. Didn't get quite as much attention, but it's worth checking out for people who didn't play the original to death. The game features updated graphics, a higher frame rate, new extra characters and animals, and a ton of minor tweaks to the original game. The last thing for the year is also an earlier one, but I put it at the end because that's when it really came out. This is Elite Dangerous, which originally launched through the Xbox Game Preview program. This PC massive space MMO launched through early access in July, and the full game launched in October. It was basically a console exclusive for about a year before coming to the PS4 in 2017.
And that's it for Xbox in 2015. Thanks for checking out my retrospective. Please subscribe and stay tuned for more retrospectives. I do a ton of consoles. I've already done a bunch, so go back and check those out. And I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.